Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. As you can tell by the title, I'm going to be sharing with you guys how to apply your foundation. Now, I already know I uploaded a video saying how to apply your base, in which I totally covered the base makeup. And by that, I mean your foundation, concealer, bronzer, things like that. But I wanted to make a separate video for each of those steps. And the reason being is that I felt like that video was very all over the place and kind of rushed, but I want to actually sit down, take the time, and explain everything to you guys in depth. So without further ado, let's just get on to the video. So before we begin our makeup, we have to prime. Now, like I said in the other video, priming is meant to help your makeup last longer and provide kind of like a smooth canvas for your makeup to go on. So different primers serve different purposes, and there's like hundreds of them on the market right now. But just as like an example, primers can help mattify your skin if you have more oily skin. They can hydrate the skin, they can fill in your pores, things like that. So a primer that was really popular like back in the day was the Benefit Professional Primer. So this primer was really meant to just fill in your pores to make it nice and smooth wherever you have the largest pores. I just said pores like 5 times. But it also provides a very smooth canvas for your makeup to go on. So that's a more high-end option for you guys. Now, a good drugstore version would be, I believe, the Maybelline Smoothing Primer. I think that is probably one of the most basic primers I could recommend to you guys if you're not looking to control shine or mattify the skin or anything like that. You just want a basic primer. I would recommend that one. Personally, for me, I don't like using a actual primer, like it's not labeled as a primer. I just like to spritz my face with some rose water spray. This one is from Heritage Store. You guys already know this is my favorite, so I just like to spritz a little bit of that on my face. So regardless of what type of primer you used, you're going to want to let that sink into your skin for a minute or two. So now that the primer has settled into the skin a little bit, I'm going to go in with the Too Faced Born This Way foundation. This is such like an OG of mine. This is the very first foundation that I ever tried, like the first high-end foundation. You do not have to get this exact foundation. The techniques that I'm going to be showing you guys can be applied to almost any foundation. So before we get into actually applying the foundation, I'm going to be sharing with you guys the different ways you can apply your foundation. So the most popular and most common way people like to apply their foundation is with sponges. Now, this one is the Morphe sponge that you guys have seen Jaclyn Hill use, and then this one is the Real Technique sponge. You do not need to spend $20 on a beauty blender when it does the same exact thing as these $5 beauty sponges does. So there's actually a big difference between these two. This one is a lot more softer, and then this one is a lot more hard. I like to use a more soft sponge so then I can really just press that foundation into my skin. I feel like it's harder to really push the foundation into my skin if I use a stiffer one, but it's just personal preference. For this foundation, I'm going to be using a sponge, but if I were to use like the L'Oreal Paris 24-hour Fresh Wear foundation, I would be using a brush. Now, the reason being is because this foundation is a lot more liquidy in consistency, whereas the Too Faced one is a tad bit thicker. I feel like if you use a brush with thicker foundations, it tends to look a lot more cakey. But then if you use a sponge for a more liquidy consistency foundation, then it's just going to soak that product right up. So I'm just going to take one pump of my Too Faced foundation. And I highly recommend just starting out with one pump, because as you learn more about makeup, you will learn that less is more. So I'm just going to dip right in with my beauty sponge, and I like to start to dot it all over my face first as opposed to just going right in. I feel like by doing this, it helps me get a more even layer, and that is definitely what you're going to want if you want to avoid cakiness. So once I've dotted that all over my face, I am just going to start blending all of that out. You're going to want to make sure you get into this little crevice of your nose. I know a lot of people tend to forget about that area. I feel like for me personally, if I look cakey, my nose is definitely going to show it.
Oh,
looks like on my skin personally. So as you can tell, a lot of my acne and my acne scars still peeks through. So I'm going to want to go in with a second layer. So if you don't have as much acne and acne scars as I do, then you might be fine with just this thin layer on your skin, in which case you can just stop here. But for me personally, I am going to go in with a second layer. So I still have some foundation on the back of my hand, and I'm just going to pick up the rest of it, and again, using that same technique, just dotting it on my face and then blending it out. I really love this foundation because I feel like this is one of those foundations that it doesn't look like something is sitting on top of your skin. It actually looks a part of your skin. It looks super natural. It doesn't have a super matte finish. I want to say like the finish is pretty natural. So now I'm going to put one more pump of the foundation on the back of my hand, but I'm not going to go in with a third layer. I'm just going to focus the product on the places where I really want to cover. And I'm also going to blend down my neck. This is very important when applying your foundation, because if you don't blend it down your neck and you just stop at your jawline, it's going to look like you're wearing kind of like a mask, and it doesn't look cute, okay? So now I'm going to pick up a very tiny amount of product, and I'm just going to dot that on the places I want the most coverage, and then I'm really just going to focus the blending in that area. I'm not going all over my face like I did before, just staying in one area. If you ever feel like you picked up too much on your sponge, you can just dab it on the back of your hand to get rid of some of that excess product and then go back in. So a big indicator that means that you need to blend more is if you can see the imprint of your beauty sponge. So like for me, I don't think it's picking up on camera, but I can see like little imprints of my sponge on my forehead. So I'm just going to blend that out a little bit more. I don't have any extra product on my sponge. I'm just using whatever is left over to blend everything out. You don't need to press extremely hard to get the product onto your skin. Just like a medium pressure, you know? You really just need to sit down and really take your time with your makeup, because if you take less time with your makeup, it's most likely going to show that you just kind of slapped it on. But if you want it to look actually good, you're going to need to take the time to really blend. Blending is pretty much key for everything in makeup. And you're really going to want to get into the hairline, so again, that it doesn't look like you are wearing a mask. So for concealer, I would normally take the Maybelline Fit Me concealer in the shade Sand, and this is what it looks like. But I'm actually running out of this, so I'm not going to use that. So the concealer that I'm actually going to use is the e.l.f. 16-Hour Camo Concealer. And I wouldn't recommend this concealer if you are just starting out with makeup, because this concealer is very, very full coverage and it's very thick, and it can be kind of hard to work with if you are just starting into makeup. So that's why I would recommend the Maybelline Fit Me concealer. So when you're applying your concealer, you're just going to want to take it right on the under eye. And I actually think that's a little bit too much for this concealer because, like I said, a little bit goes a long way. So you're going to want to take your sponge and just start blending it out. So if you have a pretty round face like I do, you're going to want to keep your concealer just strictly kind of underneath your eye, as opposed to bringing it all the way down here. And once again, if you feel like you have a little bit too much product, you can just bounce that beauty sponge on the back of your hand to get rid of some excess. So to blend out the creases, I'm going to be taking this very kind of dense small brush, and to blend out my creases, for me personally, I like to kind of like almost squint my eyes, and then I like to go in with the brush and just kind of swirl in the product into my creases. A lot of people like to really blend out the concealer into their crease because it just helps the under eye look a lot more flawless. And so quickly, I'm just going to take some powder and tap that right underneath the under eye. So the powder that I used is the Maybelline Superstay Full Coverage Powder. Now, even though this says full coverage, it doesn't mean it's going to make your under eye look cakey or feel heavy or anything like that. You're just going to want to take any sort of like tapered brush. This one is from e.l.f. It's actually a blush brush, but I like to use it for underneath my eye. You're just going to like tap into the product a little bit and then tap off any excess. And then just set right underneath your under eye. So some helpful tips when it comes to applying your foundation or your concealer is having a big mirror that's kind of a little bit far away from you and then a little mirror on hand. And the reason being is that you will be able to tell what the foundation and the concealer is going to look like as if somebody is staring at you from like an arm's length or whatever. And then by having a smaller mirror, you can tell all the little details that you might need to fix or what the foundation is going to look like up close. I am considering putting out a video where I explain how to pick out your foundation shade. The only thing with that is that it is a very complicated thing to explain and it really takes an investment, and I mean like money investment. So that is it for the video. I hope you guys found this a lot more informative than the first video I posted, and as always, you guys can comment any questions that you have down below. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!